misconception about farm labor housing. And, they just expect that they kind of mix it up with affordable housing, or thinks that somehow it should be affordable. And then we do, and just as a reality check, we all know that we live in a very desirable place. Not only is it beautiful next to the ocean, not high density, close to San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So the expectation and also development costs are very high here. So, our farming community does all it can, and also the county, by reducing fees and everything. But unless you're willing to pay a lot more taxes to subsidize the housing, I think it's just, a little bit short-sighted to think that you just, can make housing happen. In the rural land. It's very difficult to achieve high density housing, and it's not always appropriate given the resources that we have. And so that was just one of my takeaways from the meetings that we had. But I'm really glad that the county has been taking the time to think about how they're going to be approaching doing the inspections, and how we're going to hopefully take care of the real problems with the illegal housing, and the fact that the people are getting inspected already, that hopefully, and that have permits, that they will be treated with respect, and that these things can progress quickly. But thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
I got a couple things. One thing, Summer, being the planner here, but I got a request from the committee to the planner that they would attend these meetings and not be on Zoom. They should attend here because you guys all give your time up to come here for 2-3 hours once a month. I think the county should send somebody here so you can talk to them. This Zoom stuff is, sometimes it goes out, you don't know what's going on. It's very be nice if they attended the meeting. The other thing is, you guys can check, I know you go by the Brown Act. And one of the things is that any of you, and I understand, any of you that lease from Post or Mid-Penn, you got a conflict of interest, so you can't discuss those issues. And you can check it out with the district attorney, but that's what I've been told by the attorney, you can't participate. The other thing is, if you attended the task force meeting last Thursday night, Pescarol, Fifth Grove was pretty uptight about the housing situation. And I agree and I disagree with some of the things that Teresa was saying. But she was really after the county, and I kind of think went overboard, in my opinion. And during the discussion, a couple other people spoke. I think you did, and so I figured, I'm going to try to see if I can help. So I made a suggestion to Teresa that we're all pretty upset with things. There's 2 sets of rules, and we're going to get down to 1 set of rules. And I think she understood what I was trying to say. But behind her, your landlord, Gene Richardson, sat there and accused me of turning you guys into the ocean. And I did not turn I've never turned anybody in. I don't believe in it. What goes around comes around, I figure. You're doing something wrong eventually. He was accused me of turning you guys in. He calls you guys the hippies. That's him. I didn't say that. He said that. And I didn't do it. And I got up to the meeting, and him and I got into it in the meeting. And what finally figured out was a few years ago, it's got to be maybe 10 years ago, OSHA came out. Somebody turned us all into OSHA. They came out, and I had guys on route down on tunnels, and they checked my men. And I believe they saw what was going on in route down. They weren't there. It might have been Blue House, I'm not sure. They went to them, and I guess they gave him a bad time. And he blamed me for that. Well, it wasn't me, because when they left route down, route down is there, they came to my ranch. And my grandson was loading pumpkins one farm. And the guy come on my ranch and he came in my office and he asked me who was on that forklift. I think, was that you finally? And he told me I could not have that, my grandson on that forklift, and he fined me $10,000. And I had to hire an attorney, which cost me over $3,000 to go to San Jose to fight that. And so I didn't turn you guys in. I would never not turn you guys in. I might not agree with what you guys are doing, but I respect you guys. I'm not stuff. So I just wanted to let you guys know, not. In the meantime, the next day, it bothered me that it was Teresa that was upset. I went out and saw Teresa. And she said, BJ, it wasn't me. It must have been Blue House, I guess. I don't know who it was. But in the meantime, John, you know, are you a partner with them? Or you're just a worker?
Yeah, I'm a partner, BJ.
Well, because the discussion we had quite a while, good discussions. And by the way, she said that you're gonna let the county go in there, try to do some work, in my opinion. But I was telling her about the marketing that we're talking about at May City. And she looked at me like I'm crazy. And she says, BJ, I don't even know what you're talking about. Totally surprised to me now. I trusted what she's saying. But I explained it to her. And she said, BJ, if you guys can do something like that, put us in there. We're willing to go too. If you can make something easy for us and we can hopefully make a little bit more than this. Guys. So, Don, you've been at these meetings. I was totally surprised why she would be like that. So that's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Fair enough. Be happy to talk to you privately as well. I'm sure that this is the best.
No, I'm not,
venue.
I'm just, I was very surprised.
No, I'm sure that she would be
Happy to speak to you too personally. Feel that you
I don't think she was.
accused unfairly of something. Think we see another hand up on the computer.
Is that Carrie again, or is?
Yes, sorry, I was really remiss for not saying a heartfelt thank you to Summer. I mean, she's just been awesome with our committee. And when I first met her as a planner, she understood the planned agricultural district immediately and has always been very helpful to us and also Olivia. So we're really happy that Olivia will be joining us. And but you know, with the county presence at these meetings is critical. And they are, you know, obviously our partner in the PAD, and we strive to help them by providing, you know, the kind of input for the practical side of things, not just the theoretical. So just really appreciate, you know, the leadership and the help that the county planners give us. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
One thing I just wanted to, actually, I'm curious to follow up on, 'cause we haven't gotten an update on the Bay City marketing project since I think about March, so I'd be really curious to hear how projects coming along and if there was any updates from the Farm Bureau or anyone here on how it's going and how we can support it.
Right now, at the moment, Mueller working. See what he can do.
Thanks.
He can, they're talking about possible. There's some discussion, we gotta get Farm Bureau involved in discussions. Not gonna just happen overnight.
Yeah.
There's a lot of planning here. For making that to be good.
Yeah,
But I think it's.
yeah, well, if there's any way that this committee can support that or any project that supports ag on the coast, you know, give us a heads up.
I appreciate that, but I see today, Cole, you were in the front page of the Daily Journey.
My partner in one was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it kind of surprised me in a way that, you know, you guys would go up and with the RCD. It doesn't surprise me with RCD. I mean, that, you know, when we come up with that, we included everybody. It wasn't just Farm Bureau, the conventional farming. We included all of you, everybody, to come together, organic, whatever. And it's kind of surprised me that when her, for instance, would just go off and take organic farmers and say, to screw the hell with Farm Bureau, and we'll do our own thing. In my opinion, I don't think she's gonna go very far.
Mhm.
But she's a grant lady. She loves money. She loves to spend money. And that's all she's doing.
Who's
She's got,
at RCD?
Kellogg's.
Mhm.
She knows how to get money.
Mhm.
When she can really spend it. Shows on these ponds that they built. If you,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I know.
that's a waste of money. If there ever was a waste of money, and not only that, no permits.
Mhm.
So be careful what you do.
Well, to clarify that, so Veronica, our partner who was involved in that project. She was invited in by RCD, along with like a couple other girls who. To sort of try and be a liaison with some of the folks in the ag community, some of the different operators. To do, focus group meetings, to try and, pinpoint what are the main factors that folks would want to have. So I think there was, a dozen farms, give or take, in those groups. I don't want to speak on her behalf or whatever groups we have, because I'm not involved in those conversations. But I think the idea is more trying to create a focus group of what are the main elements that folks would want to have. Because I think they're aware of the other efforts as far as the Big Cities project, and I know that from talking to Veronica, there's an effort to try and work with you guys now that they sort of pinpoint what those ideas are. And so I think in the meantime, this is the intention of signing up, there's opportunities for funding, RCD. It's very good at turning some of that funding, potentially working with you guys at Farm Bureau as well. And being able to identify what are the key elements of this group, whatever it should be focused on, based on everybody's experiences. So that's kind of, my understanding it, understanding of it. Again, I'm not, so I'm not speaking on behalf.
Oh, I just, it's funny, we put our hand out for you guys. We got nothing against organics, straight up. Myself, we did the wonder. Okay, not wonder. And she goes off and does that. She's an agency. They're supposed to be representing everything. And our tax money goes, or comes off our taxes, helps pay for that office over there.
Yeah.
I think she kind of forgets that. She's the grant giver. She wants to get all this money to build a bigger kingdom. She's got a pretty good kingdom going over there. But the good people who work for them, but in my opinion, no experience whatsoever. I saw that with ponds and what they're doing and some of the projects. I'm sorry,
Yes, and
they do not know what they're doing and they're spending a lot of money. When you build a dam today and spend $1.5 million, $2 million, when the thing is only cost $1 billion, something's going on here.
yeah,
I think he's wrong.
I'm not trying to.
No, I'm not, but I just be careful because I guarantee if she gets some money, you'll see one or two more people in the office. That's what the
Well, I
reason.
think that's a good, right, I think I think the intention of this particular group, again, I'm not part of it, so I don't want to speak on behalf, but the intention of it is trying to gather information from these folks, so using it in the farmers and community to identify what are the things people want in food. I think they're very supportive of and would like to have a farm bill. I think the key thing is once we get to that point of being able to have that project, what are the key elements of it that would actually benefit the greater farming community and having the input of different farmers and community at that point. I think RCD, their role, I don't think is to dictate or decide what it would be. I think the role from my understanding of it is that they would help get grants, they would help kind of facilitate the process.
Yeah,
And then-
$200,000 to go to the, but US agriculture, get a study, that's what they're doing.
Twofold. Yeah.
Well,
The other thing-
BJ, with all due respect, maybe we should move on with the agenda, but
I think it's important.
I would like to mention that we all went to the meeting and then we asked for updates on what's happened with it. And I recall you getting up in front of everybody and you guys have been so excited to have Rob be there as a facilitator, but you weren't necessarily that interested in giving him the floor. You kind of wanted to take the floor.
That's all talk, you didn't talk.
I was there.
No, you haven't mentioned one thing since, not one word since. Yeah.
What we've done at FitPro is we created our own market. Whenever wasn't one here.
I know.
And we bust our ass off to go get to the sales by driving over the hill.
That's fine, that's good.
Okay. And so I haven't seen what you've managed to do, but you're talking about buying a $10 million building. So where's that money coming from? So I'll talk to Teresa about working with you when there's something to talk about.
Okay.
How about that?
Where'd all your stuff come from in your range?
I don't want this to devolve into
Where did it come from?
personal
From
conversations.
us buying it with the money we earned from selling
No,
vegetables.
before that. We'll go get there.
What do you mean?
I respect that you guys wanna have this conversation and I wanna, but I don't know if it's for meeting time.
No, that's fine.
And I want everyone to be heard and everyone to have be able to speak
I
in this
just want to clear
time.
the air from what I said. That's all I'm saying. You want to talk
Appreciate that.
afterwards? That's good.
And to that, again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Veronica, so I definitely put you guys in touch and no, she didn't want to reach out to you as well, as far as kind of moving on with this process.
Yeah. But I think it's wrong that we go off in different.
Oh, I agree. I think that's not the intention.
Not gonna resolve.
I think the intention is trying to gather information, so that when we use the process, it's, we get direction for it, so.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw Dante and then Joe,
It's
Vince, sorry, okay.
great. You've heard all the questions asked for postal Pen. And we've heard that, when post is private and like the water stuff we brought up, they wanna have private conversations with the shareholders. But, Post owns a pretty good percentage of the water. And there was no secret, their intent was 20 years was to purchase that and transfer it to a public agency, which is Mid-Penn. So I would think that there'd be a little more transparency and the books would be open and the MOU understanding, you have the Farm Bureau might kick in there. And we've been asking these questions now for months and months and months. Just sort of, wearing us down here with time, not coming to meetings. We have a lot to say, but they have all of our questions, waiting for the answers, and they parcels along the coast there that they've owned for close to decades, have all that water. All these years, they've known that they can't farm that ground because of that WCB easement restriction. But to hold on to all that water for all these years, basically subsidize the system. They're paying on shares, even though they don't use a drop of water. And I'm looking back thinking, gosh, why didn't right at the gate, they just retire those shares, or these earlier conversations? We would be so much farther along in these last 2 decades of working on ways to take that water to other farms and other ranches. Can really use that water, but instead now we're at the 11th hour here trying to figure this out. And we're asking some questions. Hey, yeah, people farm this long before us and they will long after, but what's happening while we are here is these restrictions that are being placed on these lands and deed restrictions in perpetuity. That's a long time. We want to get it right, farmland futures, that's what we're about, farm, and I believe that was their campaign initiative at one point. They invited us all out there to the Harbor Bar when they started that. And I said, oh my God, this open space group's coming around, they're about farming. And I think today that's just lip service. I don't not feel that anymore, and they would be here tonight in this room addressing these questions.
Let's let Vince speak.
Yeah, I like to clear the air a little bit on RCD and what's going on and frustration. It's been created. And the thing is, by both parties 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I said agriculture is agriculture, no matter how you raise it. And the thing is, we all have the same problems and issues, let alone starting to get divided amongst ourselves. And that was created. And 10 years ago at a meeting, I'm totally been open-minded to all these sort of to organic and grass-fed. If you're in the industry, don't look over the fence, you're not gonna last long. So I went to some organic farms and I've gone to almost every grazing workshop that Tomcat put on. And at 10 years ago, Laura from Post and Kathy Webster, we were talking, she says, Vince, somehow, I hope we can close the gap. And I says, we could close any gap if we'll discuss and talk things over. The problem is not on production. The problem is agriculture, we're in a basketball game. The organic farmers and grass-fed beef industry is being in the basketball game, they got a basketball rolled on the court. The commercial ranchers have a football. The basketball, no matter how you drop it, will roll. The football is not going to roll, it's not dry. The thing is, what I'm getting at, the organic farmers and the grass-fed beef industry, organic farmers will not be critical to you or anybody else, but the fact is, it's well subsidized by outside money. The conventional farmer is subsidized by production, crops, cows and beef. That's the difference. That's why the dissension started, and that's why it's still today. The fact is that when the grass-fed beef industry started, I looked at it in and out. Why wouldn't? I found that substantially, financially, it wouldn't work. The organic industry is also looking at a situation where the production is down and the cost of production is up. Now, I'm not telling you your business, I'm not asking your business, but me looking from the outside in, without subsidies, I'm sorry, but you can't operate. I could go to the bank and have all the ideas in the world. All the plans I'm gonna have, all the things that are gonna happen in the next 5 years. But what works for me is I walk in and I give them a check, I walk out the door. That works. Another thing that hit me wrong with the organic, with the grass-fed beef industry, and I mentioned Tom Taylor Farmer, so I'm not saying nothing behind it. They put an article in the paper, the Examiner, San Jose Mercury, the Tribune, about my cow on this side of the fence and my head of lettuce on this side of the fence. I'm not only ruining the environment, but I'm raising the unhealthy product. The same cow on that side of the fence is good. So I told him, I said, I really didn't like that, and that sat with me, and I explained to him why. The fact is, the reason we can operate either way, our side of the fence is production, the other side of the fence is where it comes from, whether donations, whatever, but it's a whole different thing. In reality, if we're gonna feed the world, this side has got to be strict up there. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm not saying you guys shouldn't do what you're doing. What I'm saying, when it comes to the town, you start criticizing the other side of the fence and having frustration, I think it's time we can talk. Now, RCD, what was the lady's name? I went as far as a year ago this month, probably, September, after a heated discussion one night. I stopped at her office. I said, Audra, I'd like to talk to you, give you some footprints, why the frustrations were out today, right? She's so good. Well, come December, as a workshop, and she said, you still on top if you did. I haven't heard of people. So between not being open, because I wanted to really sit down and talk to her and see what her side was, and my side, and maybe I would change my mind. But when they don't answer the door, it's very frustrating. And also when you got a neighbor next door, that's telling the world that this guy over here is booking the world, and he's raised unsafe product. Well, you know, come Christmas time, his name's not gonna be top list of Christmas cards. So that's where we're at. That's where the frustration's at, is because we don't sit down and say what's on our mind. We all go in different directions. And how can we go in different directions, you know, the same place, which is feasible?
Well, that touches on the follow-up question I had, because from my understanding, Arthur's left the position of agricultural
I know.
ombudsman.
But meantime, she was there
Yeah.
for almost a year.
But my question is, has that position been filled? Because I think it's critical. It has. Okay.
Yeah, I have to talk to her. I'm going to talk to her.
I haven't seen her at this meeting, I'm sure
There's-
she was here once.
There is a, that ag ombudsman, that position is filled. The new, ag ombudsman, I can get the name, she does plan on attending these meetings. I think she was unable to attend this one, but she did reach out and express that she does intend to attend future meetings, most likely in person. And the person is,
It's Elijah.
thank you.
I'm gonna mispronounce her name, but Melio.
Melio, yes,
And I
right.
have her contact information and can put that in my report to you when we get to that part in the agenda.
Because I know that when Audra was in that position, her attending these meetings really helped these types of conversations when they would come out.
I just want to have one with her. Discuss without interruption, and also the amount of time limit, and ask her what, we're just, say, this is how I see it. This is how it is, and we can figure out what you're doing, and figure out why my thoughts this way. I mean, just so.
How we can help each
When
other.
when you ask twice and it doesn't work, so evidently, how do you open the door and how do you close the gap?
Yeah, definitely. Any other members of the public before we jump to committee member updates? Okay, then why don't we jump ahead to, since Peter, you're ready, committee member updates and or questions to allow committee members to share news and or concerns for items not on the agenda.
I just want to echo on a few comments that everybody made. First of all, I agree with Dante. I own a big shareholder of the water system and my concern, we're concerned what's going to happen. McKin takes over in the as well. And they said that they would have a account for private discussion. I also stated that they're public water, they're a public agency, and on an MOU, they can discuss that publicly. And they don't like discuss. They share them, we work on finding it. Well, their share that they own and they can generally talk publicly. And the other thing too is just go on what we just said about the OSHA that came around. I remember it was around 10 years ago. And because they came to our place to make sure all of our workers had water and all this here. And it was so crazy that they came around. But and then lastly, I want to put there a little bit of Vince is saying, I watched a special one time a few years ago on PBS. And PBS said that if all the farmers went organic, it will almost starve because they can't produce enough volume. And especially if they're say that because of you guys' choice what you were doing. It's just that we feel from you guys forgot you just said from RCD and everybody else. And standard that we face. That makes it challenging for us to mention all of them.
Can I mention one thing just because Vince said read your comment directed at me as well? I don't want to speak personally, I'm not involved in it in any way. We're an organic farm, my family's been farming in California since we were in the 20s. Everybody that's our conventional, my family, are still doing conventional. I don't have anything against conventional. I apologize if that came across any of my comments that way, because that's definitely not the case. We also have never been subsidized by anybody. The only time we've ever raised outside money besides sterling produce sales was when we lost about $100,000 of equipment in the CZU fire in 2020. And stuff we could save after fighting that fire for about 60 hours straight. Some folks raised money for about $40,000 for us. There's a huge help, but again, that's not subsidizing what we're doing. So I'm not trying to disagree with conventional aspects. I think we have a pretty good model as far as us working with a wide range of different businesses throughout the greater area. I mean, it's part of the big reason why, particularly RCD reached out to Veronica in particular, is because we work with so many different buyers, not distributors, but grocery chains, large institutions, universities and such, that basically span throughout the state of California and Nevada. So I think that's just kind of the reason, just to give you the backstory of why we're invited to do that. I'm just want to say clearly though, I don't have any against commercial farming. If I did, I'd be against how close my family. I don't know why, and I should know how I worded it, that's the, I don't know what's probably. It seems to me I get that there, yeah, and if you guys didn't take advantage of it, I think it would be stuff dumb. So I understand, the issues I would do, what I'm saying is, generally is that. It's you guys, but from the agency that are favoring you guys, we need help. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't disagree. I mean, we haven't received benefits from the public agencies. And I didn't say that. Oh, yeah. No, you know what? In the vice president, but I take the double. Last meeting for our whatever. And the thing. Yeah, I don't think that's true. I mean, I think we're all.
If I may, because we do have business to attend to at this meeting. But so I just wanted to make sure, I feel like if you have more to say, of course, jump in. I just wanted to circle back to what we were chatting about before the meeting started and just made sure it was captured for the recorded meeting part, which is this committee's desire to follow up on last month's motion to make sure the Cloverdale Ranch questions and conversation is agendized at the next meeting. So I just want to say that for the record. We know, or we already clarified, but so just wanted to make sure we got that out there. And then just on a personal note, coming from the cannabis industry, I just want to share what saying we have in the cannabis industry is cannabis versus everybody. Because we're not going to survive if we don't stick together. And there's the indoor growers and the outdoor growers and the organic growers and the conventional growers and those who use additives and those who don't. But when it comes, we fight amongst ourselves like you wouldn't believe because we're human, like everyone and like us here. But when it comes to policy and facing outward and out of our community, it's us versus everybody. So felt appropriate in our conversations tonight. So co-side agriculture versus everybody. And with that, should we jump on to the finally catching up on all the minutes that I'm finally finishing now that I'm leaving the committee?
We should definitely do that. I would like to just say something. I got a little heated there and I want to just thank you very much for your service. Thanks Summer as well. And thank all of you guys who come from farming families that have been on the coast here for decades, generations. And I don't think that maybe you have the idea that folks, in my organization or other young farmers that are farming organically are opposed to the older generations. I think that anyone who caretakes the land, just do that in a way that's productive and it creates value. There's a lot to teach society in general, and certainly to teach me. And I want to make sure that that's heard. And something thanks or BJ anything that implied with my comments, and I recognize it's already 7 o'clock.
Well, you
So
teed me up because I didn't get a chance as well. I was all flustered, but I got to thank BJ. It was an honor to work with you as when you were chair, and it was the same, John. It's just been an honor to work with you since you stepped into that role, which I know no one wanted to take, and it's really been a joy working with you and seeing you really come into your own as our fearless leader. So thank you. It's been a joy.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
your help.
No, really. We all care about the same things, you know.
I appreciate you, Thomas. There's just one thing I want to say. Just think that, we're trying to come together as one. We've said that many times. It shouldn't be organic, it shouldn't be conventional, it shouldn't be agriculture. But yeah, what you want to do in organic, more power to you. But I think it was very unfortunate with this article, in my opinion, that we're trying to do it. Roy Mueller just come out not too long ago and said about racism, gave you the idea of what kind of where he wants to go. And then all of a sudden, RCD comes out completely the opposite on the other side. I think that was a slap in his face. Why not, again, come together? It might not even happen. But, and then get a mic. But you can't do it with them over us over here and you guys going running over that thing. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Yeah, I agree.
And you seem to be a pretty sensible guy,
I appreciate it.
I do.
Okay, on to the minutes.
I have a quick report. I'll be quick since we're running out of time. On August 1st, the Ag ID program resolution was passed by the board. So this does, thank you, Lauren. This does allow livestock operators and their managerial employees to apply for an Ag ID. And at this time, it's only for livestock, but it does have a provision in it. So when the law changes, that we can hopefully quickly pivot and add in row crops as well. We're currently working with CAL FIRE to try to get a training scheduled and order the things we need to produce the actual Ag IDs. So also at that board meeting, I did present the crop report. We published it, the 2022 report. It is down by 5.9%. And so we're at 92,179,000 for total production. We have planned the growers workshop. This is for continuing education hours for your pesticide permits. And I have a lot of information on that. So to get your pesticide permit, you need a private applicator certificate, and there's new requirements for that. So please contact my office. I'm not going to go into that here. One other thing is the As Fresh as It Gets program. We are trying to plan a tour for the fall. We are looking for growers who are would be willing to host a tour at their property, but also those growers being ones that can accommodate direct sales to a restaurant. That would be key because the people on the tour are mostly restaurants, local restaurants. And so we want to really connect the growers with the restaurants. So that's a key factor in this as well. So if you're interested, please reach out. There has been a little bit of change at the San Francisco Peninsula. The people who organized the tour, Nova is no longer with them. And so I don't know how quickly this transition will be for that. So contact me if you're interested, and I can help facilitate getting the San Francisco Peninsula people in contact with you if you're interested in hosting the tour. And then I heard a comment about the agricultural ombudsman, and so her name is Elijah Melio, and her title is Agricultural Stewardship Program Manager, and that's under the RCD. And so the contract for the Ag Ombudsman, it just pays for a portion of that position. And so I currently have her information. If you guys have a pen, I will give you her phone number. It is 650-712-7765, and that's extension 122. And her email address is eliza@sanmataorcd.org. And just a key point here is that the Ag Ombudsman is a non-regulatory, confidential permitting assistance to agricultural producers and landowners. And I was hearing comments at the Farm Labor Housing meeting about, compliance officers versus, just having someone help with compliance. So the Ag Ombudsman is in this position to help you with compliance, but again, she's non-regulatory. So if you want the ultimate answer from somebody, that I am concerned about, because they don't have the jurisdiction over enforcing the code. So I just want that to be clear. So it's to help you through the permitting process. But again, if you want the ultimate answer, the end answer, you're going to need a code enforcement officer who has jurisdiction to answer that question. So I just want to make that clear with everybody. And that's all I have. And again, Lauren, I really appreciate all the work you've done for this committee. You're awesome.
You're awesome too, Corin. It's been great working with you. You won't be a stranger.
Corin, this is Jess. When did Nova leave? Because I had a long conversation with her this week.
Well, I thought she emailed me last week and let me know that was happening. So that she's going to Filoli. So I don't know how soon she is leaving or not, but I know I think she's going to leave it in good hands. I just don't know exactly this transition, how long it'll take.
The tours, someone was curious, Daniel's curious about the contact information for participating in the tours you mentioned.
In the what?
Fresh as it gets tours.
Oh, yeah. So contact me for right now. I think that might be best, just with Nova leaving. I don't know the transition. So you know how to contact me. Was that Dante?
No, Daniel, our new
Oh, okay,
member.
great. Daniel, you probably don't have my contact information. And I apologize for not being there tonight. I just had a personal thing come up, and so I figured this was better than not showing up at all. So my email address is KWIDDEL. So my last name is up on the screen there, at smcgov.org. And Daniel, welcome to the committee. I will definitely see you next time.
And then I think Dante had a follow-up question as well on one of the items.
Yeah, on the ombudsman position there, that should, hopefully we can find some funding. And whether it's through the RCD or through your office or the county or whatever, I mean, with everything that's going on in the task force, and once they get all the numbers and that second conversation that they're talking about having, is it formidable, legalized, et cetera. I mean, that's gonna be full-time position out here on the coast. We really, really need help besides the grants or the Department of Housing and all that other stuff. It would just be really, really helpful that as an assigned planner or someone that knows the coast side, knows the rural area, knows it all, that help people through the process. Because I mean, you go in there now, and then Steve Monos has heard this as well, you know, Tuesday versus Thursday, left, right, talk to him, not her. That's not what I heard, but he's got a different answer. Some consistency, help us. We are starving for a bad word. It's called a little bit of development out there. I mean, from farm labor housing to affordable housing, that ADUs allowed on PAD, and we're just so restricted. We call ourselves out there with these regulations saying it.
Yeah, I
The whole
think
time just.
He's gonna put a plan in.
I took note of that, Dante. I think though, the point that I wanted to make is, you know, the agriculture, the jurisdiction over the code.
Yeah,
And
that makes
that
sense.
the ag ombudsman doesn't necessarily have that. I think where the ag ombudsman really, you know, wins here is kind of giving you the resources and pointing you in the right direction and kind of assisting with understanding the county's organization and who has jurisdiction over what. It's free, it's confidential. So if in case anyone's like worried, oh, well, I don't want to like go talk to the county because, you know, that means that a code enforcement officer is going to come out. That's like where they, you know, the ag ombudsman really can help you is, you know, to give you that confidential, free advice. But again, they don't, and because they're non-regulatory, they don't have the jurisdiction over the code. So.
There's so much to learn. I mean, I guess you'll take every question back and ask and come back with an answer. But you would even work with that other position, you know, the planner, because my husband position, what's the percentage that she had, you know, how many hours a week or a month, or how does it work? It's
Like 50-50,
I'm not sure.
but actually the best person to advocate for would be Mr. O'Neill here, who's with District
I totally
3
agree.
office.
Like this Corin, though, it's under her office. What is the percentage of allowance of time out of her 40-hour week that she can put
Well,
towards?
it's a maximum contract amount is what it is. And so they have to bill us hourly for how much work they're actually doing in that program. So typically they will do other work to make a full position, right? So.
So just because we're on this topic, one quick anecdote about the urgent need for this. So I bought some off-the-shelf hoop houses, standard off-the-shelf hoop houses that I needed for some nursery work, you know, extend the growing season on some things, do some seedlings to get them ready for the year. The permitting office wanted to charge me $30,000 to review the permits. The hoop houses cost a total of $50,000. I said, this is ridiculous. You're trying to kill farming. They said, sorry, this is the rules. It's this many square feet. We have to charge you this much. And I won't bore you with all the details, but these are the kind of issues farmers are running into. And it was the exact same thing. Everybody who I'd asked, different answer. Agricultural ombudsman wasn't really able to help me. So this is the problem in my opinion.
And because you go on another day and they say, oh, you don't require permitting, hoop house is gonna see the X.
Well, that's what happened, right? I bought them because the RCD told me no permits were required. Then the county came in and said, no permits are required, and it's $30,000 for us to even look at the permit. So
How high are
they're high, the ones you can drive a tractor under.
is the surface? You don't need to.
Yeah. So anyway, I was told I didn't need a permit, and I was told I wasn't.
Pretty cool, like a greenhouse.
And the cost was outrageous to even look at it, so. things like that.
Important discussions. I do want to make sure we get
Thanks,
to good
Laura, for
business.
being here one last time.
I want to get these minutes and this letter approved so I can wrap up my commitments to this committee. So
Yeah, I think that's important. The letter.
So for agenda item number 6,
We were delaying it so we can get you back.
Yeah, let's keep me here. Okay, let's keep going. Consideration of meeting minutes for the August 8th, 2022, October 17th, 2022, November 14th, 2022, and February 13th, 2023 AAC meetings. And I'll just provide an update. This was the first chunk of my backlog that I owed this committee. And these were the ones I got done in time to be on this agenda. The next chunk, which is like March, April, June, and July are done. Summer has them, I can confirm, and they will be on the next meeting's agenda. So. I've finished that commitment. They are not printed out in this, in the printout here, but they were in the full packet digitally, if anyone wanted to review them. Or we voted on them.
I read through them and I will make the motion to approve them as written.
Well,
But I don't know that, I mean, I just skimmed them.
yeah. So on second.
You can second that.
I also have the rest. Okay. Okay, let's do a roll call vote. It's gonna be tricky because we've got some extension. So on the motion to approve the minutes as written, James.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Cole.
I'm not aware.
Yeah, usually I would abstain, and then I would normally abstain. I'm gonna still abstain because I wrote them, but we still have a 3 out of 5 votes yes, so I think that still passes. And county council can correct me if I'm wrong on the recording later. Okay, great. Moving right along, so next up, we've got the community development director's report. Back to, is Olivia taking it this time, or Summer, is this your last go of it?
Olivia will take it.
I'm taking it this time. Okay,
Sounds
so
good.
for the director's report, starting at the top, covering the month of July up until August 4th, there were no PAD permit applications that were looked at by the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission. And then for the planned agricultural district permits, none were received, and then also no coastal development exceptions were received during this time. And for other projects, we have 2 of them. The owner is, item A is the Warwick Mobile Home Park LLC, under applicant Joseph Denny. And this is for an after the fact coastal development permit for unpermitted concrete. There is grading involved. This one came in pretty recently. I am processing it. The applicant is still submitting some documents. I don't have a lot of detailed information, but if you do have questions, you're more than welcome to email me directly. And then the next item, item B, is for owner applicant SKRRR LLC, which is for location of 37 Frenchman's Creek Road. That is being handled by Angela Chavez. And if you do have questions on that, it's for Williamson at contract cancellation, owner initiated. And that one also came in at the end of July. If you do have questions on that, her email is listed for questions. You can email her directly. And I believe Summer is going to touch on additional announcements, number 1.
The additional announcement, AAC vacancies, it's just that we're still pending the boards and commissions and Board of Supervisors office regarding the filling of the last 3 positions, which is a farmer, a member of the public, and conservationist seat are the last 3 vacancies that are pending.
Okay, but that's an active search at this point.
There's no recruitment right now. I think they're trying to pull back at the previous list that of applications to see if there's still interest from some of those previous applicants.
I think that's likely, in that I know 2 applicants from, what was it, fall 2022 who weren't placed on the committee at that point, who were very interested to participate. So I definitely recommend reaching out to that round, most whatever that was 6 months ago or so.
Yeah, great. And that's it.
Right.
And I just want to do a quick
Okay.
time check at 7:15, just a heads up.
I had a quick question for you, Summer. Coming back to what they were talking about earlier with the water rights at the post and the pen. And we had asked to agendize that, and I was wondering if we had heard from them, if they're going to be sending someone to any of our meetings anytime soon to start answering some of our questions.
They neither were able to attend tonight's meeting, and I don't think that they are going to be attending a future meeting, but I'll circle back around to them again, because we will agendize it for the September meeting and let them know
We
and
just-
pass them the recording again.
Yeah, how we discussed before we were called the meeting to order is that we provided written questions. So in lieu of attending a meeting, we would very much request that they could find some time in the next month to at least provide some answers or directions to the questions we provided.
And that's all been passed to them previously, so we'll follow up with them on that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Summer. Alright. So regular agenda. And so did we actually have,
We do, and they've been
Item.
waiting here patiently, except I was gonna request that we address number 9 first, since that's should be a quick order of business, and then can provide the rest of the time for the presentation. Understanding as well that Natalie Sayre, our member who coordinated this and specifically requested this agenda item, is not able to be in attendance this evening. So I don't know how we want to handle all that thing.
it's the first one here?
Yes, she did pass her questions over in advance, and we passed those over to the representatives, and we'll also be providing her a recording so she can listen to it after.
Great. I'd like to make a motion that we address agenda item 9 next. Yeah. Roll call vote to address agenda item 9 next. James,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Peter,
Yeah.
Cole,
Yes.
and I'm Lauren, we're voting yes. Okay, passes. Okay, so this one is 2 years in the making, guys. We started when BJ was chair and have had subcommittee meetings about this and then brought it back to the main committee, and then it got bumped for many, many meetings and we weren't able to discuss it. And then we really dug into it in November and December and January and came away with some clear recommendations from this committee on how to update the agricultural ag tourism guidelines to just increase the economic viability of farms on the coast side. So this letter, thank you so much, Summer, is capturing the recommendations of this committee as I understood them.
Can you read it for a moment?
Yeah, I was gonna actually, if you don't mind, the first part is kind of a summary of what I just said, and I wanted to just thank you so much, Summer, or Olivia, whoever is providing this, just wanted to run down the recommendations kind of one by one. So the first one, just kind of walk us through it, was particularly around expanding the timing of the consecutive day events. So currently you're allowed 2 45-day ag tourism permits for a consecutive day event. They were designed around the pumpkin and the Christmas tree season. In response to conversations we had at this committee, the strongest recommendation that was captured was that those 45 days get expanded to 60 days. To allow more setup and breakdown time, more sales time, particularly in not just for pumpkins and Christmas trees, but for any type of, crop that you're selling off your farm. So that was the first recommendation, expanding from 45 to 60. Then something we discussed quite a bit was different iterations of that same number of days. So if you're allowed 2 consecutive day events, why can't it be 1 120 days, 2 60-day, 3 40-day, or 12 10-day events to be capped at 1 per month, basically 12. So these are all recommendations that the committee discussed. Something else, and then just some extra notes, consider more flexibility in consecutive day timing. because local tourism mostly occurs on the weekends. And consecutive day events run through the week. That's addressed a little bit more in the next item. When I already mentioned setup and breakdown days. So before we get to the next one, does that track Peter, James, John, with some of the conversations we've been having?
Question. Comment that I put in there was not to have less than what we already have.
Yeah, so sorry, yeah, thank you, yeah, absolutely. And if we scroll up to the top, the kind of framing conversation up there. What did I say? Okay.
I hate that.
Here we go. So in the second paragraph, I'll just read this out. The AAC is committed to maintaining the existing goals of the ag tourism guidelines, especially that all ag tourism uses are secondary and supplemental to existing agricultural uses of the land. Additionally, the AAC is making these recommendations with the goal of expanding the permitted uses under the ag tourism guidelines. Please note that these recommendations are not made to limit the existing agritourism uses and activities that require a permit in any way. Does that capture? Okay, cool. That was.
I just didn't want to lose to that.
Yeah. I was thinking about you when I was writing that one.
I was just like.
Okay, great. So we captured that one. Okay, let's scroll down. Thank you so much. Let's get to the second one. So this is kind of the biggest new use that we're recommending, which is to allow non-consecutive day event. And this is really in reflection to the conversation that tourism is mainly on the weekends. So if you have 145 day window, that's what, really 6 weekends of heavy ag tourism use. So the kind of biggest new recommendation this committee is making is to allow non-consecutive day events. And as you said, I'm kind of repeating myself here, since most tourism occurs on the weekends, allow weekend only event permitting from May through December. And so this was one where we really discussed a lot of different options, and this is kind of the one we landed on, which is the option of up to 64 permitted event days, which again kind of references back to the 60 of the consecutive. So there's some logic there for the county of why we're recommending it. And so across those 8 months of May to December, there's 32 weekends. So if you allow permitted activity on each weekend day, that would be 64 potential permitted weekend event days, because math. So their goal was to allow one ag tourism application that would permit these type of weekend events, again, to reduce the paperwork burden on farmers having to come back for every weekend for a permit. And then other things that were discussed were limiting the frequency to 60 non-consecutive day events, or have the total number of non-consecutive event days allowed per year to be used at the operator's discretion. So kind of coming back to Peter, what you were saying, as much flexibility as possible for the operators to, figure out how that works. And Ryan isn't here tonight. He had some great recommendations on like we've got a pumpkin festival, we got Christmas tree season. Why can't we have, Brussels sprout festival or weekend strawberry festivals, or, just as much flexibility for the operators. So that's probably the trickiest one, because it's new, that we're recommending. So we can circle back to that if we want to discuss it further, if we can keep going down. The third recommendation was to increase the frequency of allowed farm dinners. So currently in the ag tourism guidelines, you're allowed 12, and it's kind of a pretty arbitrary number, 1 per month. But we know that there are a lot of operations on South Coast that there's interest. People are asking for more farm dinners. So that was something that we discussed, of upping it again, thinking about 48 or 60 farm dinners. So using that kind of 60 number as a baseline. And so if we allowed 48, it would be allowing 2 farm dinners per weekend for 6 months of the year. And that goes back all the way to Bill Cook. That was his recommendation in like 2021 meeting at one point. And then the 60 farm dinners would be consistent if the county wants consistency. Last one here is to remove the recreational educational description from other types of allowed ag tourism activities. So there's this kind of bucket of allowed activities at the end that says other types of other recreational educational ag tourism activities subject to review and approval of the community development director. So we just wanted to remove that qualification that it's specifically recreational or educational, to say any other ag tourism, you can make your case for it. You can put a permit in, you can, a special, permit from the CDD if you have a very unique activity. It's not specifically recreational or educational. Okay, so that was a lot of information I just dumped at you guys, but those were from all of our conversations, subcommittee conversations here, all of the notes in terms of bringing them all together. It kind of boiled down to those 4 key recommendations.
I got a question. Do they have, all these have to be under permit?
No, so well, yes, it's the ag tourism permit from my understanding, which is, so it's not, and the staff can probably help me if I'm wrong, and you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the ag tourism guidelines were created as a kind of stopgap. So you wouldn't have to get a full PAD permit for these types of activities. So we're limited in that we can't do anything that would fall under PAD. So it's the ag tourism permit is supposed to be a little bit looser and allow more flexibility.
It's a
in it.
different word, permit. We always call it a permit.
Okay, yeah,
The other
Thank you.
question is that, how do we know, say these 60-day periods is set up and take them? How do we know when it starts and when it finishes? Because right now, that is being abused to no end.
yeah, from my understanding and the staff that actually processes these permits can correct me if I'm wrong. It's the permit that you're given, and Peter, you might know from the Christmas tree stuff, is it has specific days on it that you're allowed to operate. So it's on a case by case, permit by permit basis, or approval by approval basis.
Currently, it's 45 days. Somebody going for it. Did he say from its day to that day? Almost 145 days. And then you say Christmas trees, but it depends. It's what's like this, right? Some like to start a little later, so they got a few days to do.
But I think people should know, because I know, we all know one is 45 days, and they start in May, setting up. And it's getting larger and larger, and nothing's done about it. The other thing is that all these activities they want, you know, you gotta remember, we got neighbors. And it becomes a burden on the neighbors. I know a couple. I mean, they park in their driveway, they urinate in their lawn. You know, I think we kind of overdo this. I mean, to me, I don't mind seeing some of these, but one after the other, we're farming, we're not supposed to be entertaining. That's restaurants we got around the area. And I say, you know, you have a few dinners, but you know, consistently every weekend, if you're next door to these people, then agricultural takes the lead. And then these damn farmers, they can do anything they want, and then we get in the newspaper. If they're occasionally, I can understand them. But, and again, you should be a legitimate farmer, not just somebody who's got little parents, and they're gonna have this dinner. You know, that's,
Yeah,
that it gets abused. I don't mind seeing people farming, and this is a subsidy to get them through. That's fine. But when it becomes, you know, on the weekend, we're gonna have one of these. I think myself, personally, I think that's kind of overdone. I think you're abusing what it was meant for, and you're not respecting the community. I mean, North Street, it gets really traffic, people walking in town or so far. And it's inconvenient for the people on the street. There's a lot of people who come in, while people walk out. They don't walk on the side, they walk right down the white line.
dangerous for them.
You know, and that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not what I never respect each other. You know, if you want to continue and be successful, that's fine, but respect your name. You know.
Yeah,
Well, Lauren, thanks for putting this together. I think that we did, and that TJ's comments were, comments like those were discussed. We just, overall sentiment, maybe you can correct me, Peter, is that we were hoping to make recommendations that could potentially be supportive of more economic activity for farmers. I
yeah.
think you've captured that here.
Yeah, from a process perspective, and I think this may clarify as well, these are the committee's recommendations to the county to update the ag tourism guidelines as they see fit. So they may or may not take these recommendations. But what this letter does is it concludes the committee's process of making those recommendations and where they're supposed to then come back with a drafted version of any incorporated recommendations for this committee to review again. So this is not the final say on the process. This is making the recommendations for them to incorporate for us to review again.
Yeah, so I feel like it's
Hopefully allow
highly
it.
unlikely that they'll take all these recommendations, and then I think it's unlikely that anyone would actually. You know, but maybe they would, you know, be able to do 48 farm dinners and actually take over that neighborhood and be inconveniencing.
And that might require a PAD permit and not an agricultural permit.
But yeah, it does open it up if they were to take all of these recommendations, I think.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
concern.
high level frequency. And I can hear Laura Richstone, our former planner's voice in my head saying, Well, that's, what is it, intensity of use, if it triggers a certain intensity of use, that's a PAD permit, that's not an ag tourism permit. So I know that she was at least in that role quite sensitive to it, but Dante, you had.
Yeah, just sort of walk us through next steps, timeline to the board of supervisors, they kick it back, is there a, obviously there's a date and it's all gonna be finalized, how do they?
No, just like, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
At some point, then, before the board of supervisors, the public gets to weigh in as well, just sort of walk us through this.
Yeah, so the ag tourism guidelines are not adopted, they're not codified. They're just guidelines that the county uses. And so what would happen is Lauren stated correctly, this is just to capture comments from the Ag Advisory Committee for input for the county's update. What we'll do is we'll take these comments, we'll update the regulations, and we'll bring them back as a draft. So the Ag Committee will get another opportunity to review before we, make them effective, apply them. By any means, these are great comments for us to take. It would be great for you guys to be able to, pass them, to move them along to us tonight so that we can start taking a look at them. And then what we would do is we would intend to bring back a draft copy at a future meeting, hopefully within a few months, and have you guys, weigh in further. We can have further discussion on it. If there's further changes, things that you guys think of, that gets triggered at that review, we can take another look, but and then finalize them up, and then they would just go into effect. They don't, again, because they're not codified regulations, we've never codified them. They don't need to go to the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. They'll just be guidelines for our use and implementation.
Great, thank you. So I think my last thing I'll say on this is I hope that we can pass this, our item, so that we can pass this letter on and just continue the process, and knowing it's not final, and that we'll have another chance as a committee to review how they're incorporated. Let us at least get the next step going. Since we addressed this in response to a request from farmers, we're specifically asking for dates. So this will allow us to serve those farmers and getting these to the planning department for them to incorporate as they see fit.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve of this letter as a presentation of the committee's view to the county. I don't know if you can, be able to repeat that.
Yeah, well, they have the recording now, so they can do it from the recording. I'm hesitant to second it only because I wrote it, so if another committee member.
I'll second.
James. I can't stop taking notes somewhere. Still taking notes. Okay, let's do a roll call vote on the motion to approve these as presented, representing the committee. I'm gonna go with that. James.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
And then I'm also gonna vote yes, so it passes.
Great. Lauren, you're always welcome to come back and take minutes.
You're gonna be a non-committee member? Well, I will certainly be, whenever this comes back on the agenda, I'll jump in as a member of the public, it's for sure.
There was a hand raised, and then
Yeah.
it's 7:35, so we got about 25 minutes for the last item also. The hand raised, it's caller 2489. And
Looks like you're
you're
unmuted.
able to unmute and,
Oh, now you're muted again.
oh, now you're muted.
I think it's like *8 or something to unmute.
There you go.
Good evening. This is Ron Sturgeon from San Gregorio, and you omitted public comment on the last item. And I don't know if you want to reconsider it, but I'm not going to give comment unless it's going to be reconsidered.
Our apologies, you're absolutely right. In my haste to conclude my business with the committee, completely just, bulldozed through public comments. So my apologies, Ron. And would certainly want to hear any public's input on any item.
Thank you. And I guess the first question would be to you, Lauren, in that I believe you wrote a letter to the Planning Commission at one point on behalf of two growers. Do you have a conflict in relationship to this item?
This item, I do not, as I do not have any agricultural business that I either work for or own in San Mateo County. And all of, in my consulting work in the advising of cannabis license holders, I currently don't have any clients in the state of California.
Oh, okay. And
I also, just to clarify, this letter that I wrote on behalf of the committee does not reflect my personal opinion. It simply reflects the committee's discussions and recommendations. So my role in drafting the letter was just solely as scribe.
Okay, but that wasn't the case with the letter that you wrote on behalf of the Pie Ranch and Blue House.
I don't believe I've ever written a letter on behalf of Pie Ranch or Blue House. I don't know those operators personally and have never done business with them.
Okay. Get back to the point I think I would like to make is that the Ag Advisory Committee is mandated to protect and preserve agriculture. And it's increasingly obvious in these guideline revisions reflect a reorientation towards doing anything on the land but agriculture. It's my experience that these secondary activities have a tendency to become the primary focus and not agriculture. And it's just borders on the absurd to think that there's no impact to agriculture from changing the number of dinners a farm entertains or invites or conducts from one a month to one every weekend. And I strongly recommend that the committee consider a second reading of this letter. And I think it is just a step in the wrong direction for agriculture to be concerned about revising the ag tourism guidelines, and the committee's not concerned about market development. And I really think it's a mistake to send this letter to the Planning Commission, or I mean to the Planning Department, when the committee is organized to make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. And it's like the committee is in league with folks at the county planning and perhaps the former ag ombudsman to substitute themselves for the legislature. And it's not my memory that yeah, I disagree with Summer in that. I think that these guidelines were sanctioned by the Board of Supervisors. And they certainly ought to be, along with their environmental impact, fully assessed. I submit that the guidelines in place right now are adequate. They don't need to be updated to facilitate additional impacts to the agricultural enterprise in the planned agricultural district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. I completely hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with some of what you're saying, but in my role as secretary, I needed to accurately represent all of the committee discussions and recommendations. And that number of 48 was a very strong recommendation from a previous committee member. And there was never another number discussed or provided in committee discussions. So felt it was my responsibility to accurately reflect that as the secretary. And I don't disagree with what BJ brought up and with what you're bringing up in terms of the increased frequency, how that might affect prime agricultural activities. I'm also not super confident that the planning department would actually incorporate that recommendation at that number. So I think we're not too far off, and really grateful that you made that public comment so it could be reflected in the continued conversations at the planning department and in this committee.
And I just want to clarify that the guidelines were not adopted by the Board of Supervisors, and as guidelines, they would not be intended to be adopted and codified. And we do have PAD regulations that are codified. And so this is, we'll take any comments that are passed along and we'll determine what actually constitutes and rises to the level of a PAD permit in terms of intensity versus this ag tourism permit that's been that's available. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just one comment. Appreciate what the committees went through to hold us together, but our group will be putting on this.
Great, yeah. Yeah, and I think, completely, and I think that's why it was so important to me to make sure this letter got out before I stepped back from the committee, so that the conversations could continue at the draft level and make sure everyone's talking. This is not a final say, this is just what was discussed, and yeah.
No, we appreciate that.
Okay, anything else on that agenda item?
Oh, let's listen to the presenter. So sorry.
Sorry, Jim.
So yeah, for item 8, the information item on Prop 19 related to the transfer of a family farm between parents and their children without cause to the ownership for property tax purposes, we have Jim Irizarry. He's the Assistant Assessor, County Clerk Recorder. That's with us tonight. Jim, thanks for your patience and sticking in there. And we also have James Bonin, Chief Appraiser, on hand as well as a resource. So Jim is going to take the lead and provide a presentation. Thanks, Jim.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Summer, and good evening, members of the Agricultural Committee here. Today, we're just going to cover for you, really at a high level, the effects of California Proposition 19 on family farms. It's very similar also to the effect on actual housing. So let me just kind of go through here and give you a brief overview of the, With me, we'll have James Bonin, who's also Chief Appraiser, as Summer mentioned, and here's our information, and we'll share this so you can have this information for future reference as we move along. California Proposition 19 is known as the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disasters Act. What does it do? First of all, it modifies exclusions allowed for intergenerational transfers. Second of all, it provides more flexibility for seniors and disabled owner to transfer their assessed value to replacement homes. Workload impacts primarily are there at the assessor's office that we now have to do an appraisal of every intergenerational transfer. And we also have to track the change of property provided in an exclusion due to intergenerational transfers. And of course, tracking of base year transfers in and out of the county by seniors and disabled owners. Prior to Prop 19, there was no tracking of intergenerational transfers between parent to child, grandparent to child. It was just a factor that it would be reported. There would be no effect on the valuation of the property as long as you had that intergenerational transfer between parent to child or grandparent. With Proposition 19, it changed that pretty significantly, and we'll go through the process of how every property now has to be reappraised and reevaluated upon a change of ownership for intergenerational transfers and also for base year transfers. Over here. It went into effect, although the law was passed earlier, and I'll cover that a little bit later, but it actually went in effect on February 16th, 2021. So that means any intergenerational transfer that occurred after February 16th would come under the new law, and any base year value transfer after April 1st, 2021 would come under the new law. So what is Proposition 19? It was passed in November of 2020, and there's two parts, as we mentioned. There's the intergenerational transfer component, which basically says, that a family home or family farm comes under the provision. And in order for that transfer to occur, both the transferor and the transferee need to live in the home. The other factor is the factored base year value transfer of persons 55 years of age or more who are severely disabled or a victim of a wildfire or natural disaster. And what it allows is you can then pay the difference between the factored base year value and the new market value. And also you're limited, you can do this 3 times anywhere in the state. Prior to that, you couldn't do this, you'd only do it once. And now you can actually take your transfer anywhere in the state. Every county now is participating in the program. A little bit of background with respect to Prop 19 and its effect. The assessor's office basically values property based on Article 13A of the California Constitution, which was the result of Proposition 13, which passed in 1978. And prior to that, an assessment could occur at any time. But what Proposition 13 did was establish the property's base year value, which is the full market value when the property or portion thereof was purchased, newly constructed, or underwent a reappraisable change in ownership. So that event is what would trigger a reassessment. It would limit the tax rates to 1% of assessed value, plus voter approved any surcharges. And it limits inflation-based value increases to no more than 2% annually. So that means if there is no change in ownership for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, there would be a CPI increase on the value of the appraised value of no more than 2% based on the CPI established by the Department of Industrial Relations and the Board of Equalization. What Proposition 19 did, it replaced Proposition 58 for intergenerational transfers. And basically what it does is the generation inheriting can inherit the property with the factored base year value with up to $1 million in assessed value that is a credit. And then it also impacted Proposition 60 and 90 for factored base year value transfers. And the home only needs to be of equal or lesser value and was only a one-time effect, and it was within the same county or select county. So what Proposition 19 did now was expand Proposition 60 and 90 to all counties, where before counties had to adopt through their board of supervisors to participate in that factored base year value transfer of property from one county to another. How does it apply on family farms? Basically, and this also applies to a home, but a family farm is defined as transfer must occur to be a family farm of the transferee. So first of all, it must be owned by the transferee as a family farm. A family farm need not exclude a principal residence to qualify. So it can actually be based on the property itself, the value of the property, and not improvements. An exclusion claim may be filed separately for principal residence on a family farm, and the same rules would apply if there is a residence. Exclusion is removed as of the date the property is no longer the family farm, either for purposes of agriculture or is no longer the principal residence of the transferee or the transferor. Family farm means any real property which is under the cultivation, which is being used for pasture grazing, or that is used to produce any agricultural commodity, and that would qualify it under Prop 19. An agricultural commodity is defined means any and all plant and animal products produced in this state for commercial purposes. How does evaluation occur? Well, first of all, you take the base year value as the date of transfer. So that's the fair market value plus interest transferred. So if it's 100% of the value is transferred, then it would be 100% that would be calculated. If it's a partial transfer, 50%, then only 50% would be transferred. And then you add the factored base year value of the percentage not transferred. The new taxable value as of the date of transfer would be the factored market value. So, and I'll go through a little example here, minus the factored base year value and the excluded amount of $1 million multiplied by a percentage transferred. So for simplicity's sake, let's assume that what we're talking about is 100% of a transfer. And then I'll go into a partial transfer later. And of course, the exclusion amount is up to $1 million as of February 16, 2021. And it just went up to $1,022,000 as of February 16, 2023. And then to that, we add 1%, 100% of the factored base year value. So in terms, sorry for the small print here, but we put this together here just so it could be viewed as an example. So when there's a family farm where the fair market value, when it was sold, that's the fair market value, is $2,200,000, for example. There are no improvements, so no homes on the property. So you have $2.2 million of the fair market value of the property. Then what you do is you look at what the factored base year value of the property was when the parent or the transfer is bought it or actually acquired ownership. So in that particular case, since there were no improvements when they purchased it, let's just say, for example, it was worth $312,750. There was no improvements. Then the way the formula works is we would add the Prop 19 allowance of $1 million exclusion from the fair market value. And then we would do the excess amount of that, which would be $887,250. So that's the excess amount of the transfer times the percentage of transfer. And in this case, we're talking it's 100%. So that full excess value of $887,250 is what would be actually the value that is going to then be your factored base year value, and also the taxes that would be paid on that. So you've got the excess land amount, which is $887,000. You add it to the factored base year value of the original owner, and you come into a new taxable value of $1,200,000. When up above, you can see that the fair market value of the property was 2.2 million. In this particular case, once you apply the $1 million with the formula, the actual taxable value then gets reduced from 2.2 million to 1.2 million, and that's on a 100% change of ownership. Now, if there's a 50% transfer, which makes it easier, you basically take 50% off of all of those formulas and all of the factors. So the net effect is you're only calculating on half the value of the property because there's only 50% of the property was transferred. And the same formula would occur, and as you can see, it would be approximately half of that. For more information, you can get a lot of information for the Board of Equalization. And this is the website that you can go to. We also have a website, and it's right here, San Mateo County smcacre.org, assessor Proposition 19, and we have a whole write-up on Proposition 19 and how it works. And we also have a brochure that we have on our website, and all of these can be accessed through our website. So I know I went through a lot, and there's formulas in here that make it a little complicated, but now I'll open it up to some questions, and hopefully I can answer them for you.
Yeah, the question I have is if the farm is in the Williamson Act, isn't this all exempt because it just follows the Williamson Act?
It would follow the Williamson Act, yes. As long as you're in the Williamson Act, you have that exclusion.
And then say, next question, say if it's not in the Williamson Act, and then the heirs put it in the Williamson Act, upon receiving the land, then isn't exempt because then it'll still follow the Williamson Act.
Well, it depends on when the transfer of ownership occurs. If once there's a change in ownership, then these factors come into play. And then you would get the exclusions of the Williamson Act based on what the actual value of the property is, what the assessed value is. So it all depends when there's a change in ownership. The change in ownership is the trigger here. And so again, the Williamson Act has, of course, contracts and a variety of procedures that you need to go through on it. But the key with Proposition 19 is change in ownership. And that's what triggers all of these new assessments, is when there is an actual change in ownership. These formulas will occur, but the actual impact would be governed under the Williamson Act as long as it's put into agricultural purposes. But the key here is change in ownership. So you really need to be very careful with this. What we recommend, of course, is to work, with a good attorney that's familiar with Prop 19 and assessment factors, because a change in ownership can occur so easily, and you're unbeknownst even to the people who are instituting it. For example, a lot of folks think, oh, well, we're going into an LLC. I can put it into an LLC and I'll be able to circumvent some of these provisions. It doesn't work that way. Again, it's the change in ownership of and if you're going into an LLC, then it's the percentage of interest that the owner would be transferring in the LLC. As soon as there's a 51% change of control in the LLC, that could trigger a change in ownership. But the mere fact that you put it in an LLC does not necessarily relieve you of the provisions of Prop 19. So it's one of these things that before you record a property, this is really an important rule, particularly with the assessor, and this is statewide, California. Just make sure that you know what you're doing before you record a document. Once that document is recorded, that is what's categorized as an event. And if that event qualifies as a change in ownership, then you would trigger the provisions of Proposition 13, and you would also trigger California Prop 19 formulas in effect. So before you record a document, before you start transferring properties into LLC, family partnerships, work with a really good attorney that understands how all of those provisions work together. Because you don't want to get caught in a bind that you actually do the transfer, you put it in there, and it isn't caught for a couple of years. And then you would have retroactive adjustments that would occur, because eventually, when you have trusts involved, and there's a change of title in there, we look at all of those, but it takes a little bit of time to actually look at it, to ask the questions, to get the documents. And that's why it has to be written airtight. And this is where a real good attorney, a land use attorney comes in. And a tax attorney, property tax attorney in particular, to write that transfer correctly, so you don't get a surprise, or your children don't get a surprise down the line.
But you can transfer it into a trust as long as you do it correctly, and there's no.
Could you
no,
please,
change.
question? Could you please repeat your question?
If you transfer it into a trust, and there's no difference in the name ownership, but just into a trust, that is that trigger?
No, as long as there is no change in ownership of the principal, okay, so you have a piece of property and you want to put it into a trust, and you continue to be the primary, the sole owner. No, there is no change in ownership, because there is no change in ownership. You continue to be the owner of that property. You're just simply using a vehicle of a trust for other purposes, and that will not trigger a reassessment under Prop 19. But if you put it in a trust, and then there are beneficiaries, and those beneficiaries then acquire an interest, you do have a partial interest that could occur. And that's where you have to be real careful on how you set up the trust and the beneficiary. I'm not here to provide legal information, because it's extremely technical and complex. But yes, with keeping it really simple, you want to put your property into a trust, no problem. But you want to put your property into a trust with beneficiaries and certain trigger dates when that's going to occur. The moment there's a change in ownership, and it occurred after February 2022, then that would trigger a full or a partial interest valuation under Prop 19.
Okay. Wasn't this originally supposed to be just for people who lost their homes in fire? And they kind of tricked us and.
Well, we were as again surprised, that it did pass, and because it's pretty fundamental. But again, we're neutral. We basically, you tell us what the law is, and we will administer it. We serve a ministerial function, and in our position, Mr. Church's position as your assessor was neutral. So we didn't oppose it, we didn't favor it. It was just leave it up to the people to decide, and people voted on it. So
Also, I mean, I heard that people felt you got tricked by it, and they back up again because they thought one thing and it really wasn't, and then they found out that it's going to reassess and then extension. But that's government.
Yeah, and that's why it's really important to read all of the propositions, very carefully in all of the languages. But it's pretty complex. You almost have to be an attorney to understand all of the ins and outs of, of certain propositions.
Totally. This has been this is really informative and really relevant presentation, especially since we have so many intergenerational family farms on the coast. So I really thank you for taking the time to prepare this. And want to thank, even though committee member Natalie Sarah's not here, I want to thank her for bringing this up and making sure this got on our agenda.
Yeah, and we apologize we didn't get to you sooner so that we could ask more questions and take advantage of your knowledge further.
Well, that's quite all right, man. We'd be willing to come back if you would like to, have a session on it also. But we'll have this available for you, and you can refer to it in the future. And by all means, feel free to contact us, and you have our emails and telephone number there, and we'll gladly work with you and help you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right clouds.
Let's do it.
Right clouds.
Right.
So they told me one thing.
Well,
That's it.
that's it. And we're after 8 o'clock, so I will adjourn this meeting. Thanks everyone for showing up and for that. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, well, I'm getting
Sure, Jane. Oh, wow, I'll see you around some night. I'll see you like, see you at the bus.
See, it's right there.
I'll see you around some night.
She just put up an old.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask you. Summer, would that presentation be on that? I was gonna say, it's usually on like a page. Glad you're here tonight. Yeah, thank you. Same. Yeah. So each meeting has a page.
We done, so I just cut it off now?
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Summer.
Hi, are you going to be at the CoSite office tomorrow?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'll have somebody come out and pick it up then tomorrow from the CoSite office.
I'll email you, because there might be somebody at my office come by and head to
Oh,
the
okay.
Redwood City.
Okay,
I'll
okay,
email
no
you.
problem. We can connect tomorrow. Yep, no problem. Thanks so much
Alright.
for your help.
Okay to unplug you now?
Yes,
Okay. Oh, wait.
If we may conclude.
Lauren has a
Sure.
question.
Actually, we're wondering, is that presentation gonna be available on the website after, on the Ag Advisory
Yes.
Committee website after?
yeah, we'll
Okay.
post it with the video recording. We'll post a copy of the presentation PDF, yeah,
You
PowerPoint.
go on to the AAC, there's like a little bit of archives. So right it's under there. It's a little bit hidden, but.
Don't they think they're?
Okay, thank you.
Think everybody's done. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I won't be a stranger. I'll see you. We'll run it through the other thing. Sure.